Hello and welcome to the One Shot Show where GMs go to level up. My name is Paddy and I'm here, as always, with Matt.
Thank you.
We're going to jump into our topic today, which is one that has caused waves on this podcast before. We're going back into Yes and.
Oh, God.
We're going into Yes and Revisited.
Yes. And in all fairness, this is a funny one. I'm very on board with this as a topic. For the very simple reason that when we last spoke of Yes and on this show, which is to say when I last spoke, because I think that episode was just 15 straight minutes of me
You
shouting.
came prepared.
Yeah, I practiced it in the mirror. Like, I was locked and loaded. I put more effort into that than I have put into best man speeches at weddings.
My prep for this one has been diving into other systems and pulling in front of me. I have extracts from other game systems that utilize Yes and in particular ways. We were chatting about... I'm going to see if I can articulate the crux of what made Yes and so unpalatable to you.
Go ahead.
In the last episode. So, from my perspective listening to it, you had heard Yes and, which has been thrown around a lot in the TTRPG space. I think largely because many of the comedians and actors who are at the forefront of making TTRPGs like accessible online, Critical Role, Dimension 20, are actors and improvisers. And you yourself talked about like the history of improv, where Yes and came from. I myself come from like a theater improv history. So as I was listening to it, I was matching up your arguments of it is a storytelling tool for a particular form, and that form didn't necessarily map on 100% to a TTRPG.
Yes, and I find as well often it's dangerous advice to give a GM too early in their career, if we can call it that.
Absolutely, because you said like a player will come up with the craziest stuff, and if the GM's onus is always to yes and that thing, you go the campaign is off the rails and round the loop-de-loop before you can say go.
And it's often a question of rules familiarity. If you don't have enough of a familiarity, if you don't have a fluency in the rules to deal with their suggestion, then often you'll cover it with a narrative response, which, works in the meantime, but when it becomes the only tool you have, it's the only tool you have. And now you're always doing it. You become reliant on it. It becomes a crutch. It is, I think I described it in the episode as a narrative solution to a mechanical problem, and that makes it inappropriate in a lot of systems, in a lot of circumstances. But what we're talking about today, which is particularly interesting, is systems where it is, by design, included as a mechanical function.
Absolutely. So it crosses the boundary from being a storytelling exercise, as it is in theater, to becoming a core mechanic of a game in order to allow story to emerge, but also to allow players to function and to allow this particular system to function, full stop.
Could you give us an example of a system that does this and specifically how it utilizes... And by the way, just to give the full quadrant definition, there are effectively 4 whole tools here. We use yes and as a shorthand. There's yes and... There's yes, but, there's no and there's no but.
Yeah. I'm on the same page with you with that.
Yeah. So, what are some systems that actively codify and utilize this structure for mechanical purposes, even if it is to serve the narrative? What are some that are actually baking it into their rules? Talk us through that.
Well, it's currently, at the moment, I think it's the hottest story in tabletop right now, which is like Daggerheart following the most recent Gen Con that came around. Never heard of it. Never been near Darrington Press, Critical Role, Sam Regal.
Critical who?
Eat your heart out. So Daggerheart is currently...
By the way, I'm joining a long tradition of GMs called Matt.
Oh, you are. You absolutely are. One of a trilogy. Oy, oy. So yeah, Daggerheart, which I've been playing some really, really awesome games of at the moment. My table is having a great tinker with it. In our current, we're doing some porting over, we're doing some one-shots. And the core system of that game, which is a 2d12 system, is a yes and, yes but, no and system. The core system of that game is you have 2d12. One of them represents your character's hope, one the fear, or the hope and the fear of the world, basically the negative karma and the positive karma of the world. Core dice roll mechanic, no d20, you roll your 2d12, you let, total the roll, and then you say which roll came out higher. So you might roll 2d12, and you might have a 14, but it is a 10 with hope, and then the 4 is the fear dice. And as a result of that roll, there are specific mechanical implications on the GM for how to handle that roll. In some ways, it counteracts the problem of player goes, can I investigate this room? Player rolls a 5. GM goes, you find nothing. Because every roll in a game of Daggerheart, as written in the rules, should have consequence. So maybe you're rolling less often. But here's the example. You are trying to investigate the room that is above a ball that is currently in progress.
A ballroom,
a ballroom.
if you will.
No. You've snuck up from the ballroom into the boudoir.
This is the room above the ballroom.
This is the room above the ballroom. You've snuck up into the boudoir. You're looking for a letter that would incriminate a host of this ball who is, in fact, a vampire. You've snuck up to here. You roll your 2d12. If it is a success with hope, you, as a GM, yes and their offer. They have rolled a success with hope. They have gone searching for the letter. They find it, and they find a little more.
They find a vial of blood.
Absolutely. They find as they open the closet, like a victim drops down to the ground in front of them. You yes and their offer if it's a roll with hope. If it is a success but with fear, you would yes but their offer. They get what they want, they find what's in there, but there's an immediate consequence. Could be a trap, could be they hear footsteps coming down the hallway behind them, they quickly need to improvise.
They find the document. In grabbing it, it triggers a lock spell on the door.
Absolutely. They find the document, it's in code.
You suspect an alarm may have gone off elsewhere in the mansion.
Absolutely. If it is a failure...
Do you like how I yes-anded you just there?
Absolutely. Tremendous. For a man who advocates against. Ooh, smooth.
I keep my theatre background very quiet.
I keep mine very loud. Same scenario. You fail the roll, but you fail with hope. Things don't go as planned, but your character, some way as a GM, you have to, spur their journey forward.
God's shutting a door but opening a window.
Absolutely. It's kind of like you are no-butting their offer. You can't see, you crack the combination to the safe, you open it, it's not in there. There is another clue, but it's not what you were after.
I mean, it codifies the classic failing forward.
Absolutely, yeah, which has been covered, great in this and in the history of this show. And the last one is failure with fear, which is no and something else terrible happens. Things don't go as planned, and it gets actively immediately worse.
You find a document, you unfurl it, it says, "Gotcha." You hear the door lock, you hear the distant sounds of an alarm, and you hear the hurried footsteps of armored guards coming up the corridor towards you.
Absolutely. So this is those are the 4, that's what happens on your D20, quote unquote, roll inside Daggerheart, is that each time you roll your 2d12, core mechanic of the game, there could be a yes and, a yes but, a no but, or a no and it propels the story forward in ways that, as a GM, you've got to be on your toes. I think your argument still stands in terms of system mastery being at the core of yes-anding.
But in that instance, it is also a mastery of the rules. Learning to use the rules correctly on a mechanical level is what begets that narrative understanding and unlocking the true potential of that narrative tool, rather than just I yes-and my way through every scene.
Yes. And also inside the core rules of Daggerheart, it opens the door to the player. If you as the GM don't have something up your sleeve, it can go so what is, let's say that it is a success, but it's fearful. There's a consequence of some small consequence. You could throw it open to the table because we're all it's honoring the storytellers who are there.
You find the scroll, what goes wrong for you? And it could be something as simple as, an hour later, when I reconvene with the rest of the group as the ball is winding down, I realize that a telltale crest has fallen off my jacket. Probably in the quarters of the host of the ball.
Absolutely. And it's led in my games to this incredible moment where, for me as a GM, I go, oh my goodness, something goes wrong. And then as the table, we start to jam the offer. Not the fixed yes and, but what the offer of the yes and could be. And then often we'll settle on something that feels the juiciest for the story that we're trying to tell. That's I love that thing. My brooch falls to the ground, but I don't notice. And then all of a sudden, you've got a player who is in the meta introducing complications into your campaign.
I want to use this to do a semi-segue into something, and that's that Dungeons and Dragons 5th edition sucks. It is a real... and
we couldn't get through yes and without another statement crashing in.
But like to be... I don't even want to be funny about this because it's a hugely popular system. It does a lot of good things. I do not want to diminish those good things. But it's really bad in a lot of ways that aren't evident until you start looking afield at these other systems. And one of the uniquely terrible things about 5th edition, it states that there are 3 pillars to your game. There is combat, there is exploration, and there is storytelling. It gives you rules for exactly one of those 3 pillars. It gives you a third of the rules for what it says you should be able to do. You are beautifully describing, and this is why I talk about the tension between narrative and mechanics in the context of 5th edition, is because it hasn't baked narrative into the mechanics. It does not have mechanics to support the narrative. We have to keep adding that on top as GMs. We are constantly having to build in those extra things to support the things that the game clearly wants you to do, because it keeps pointing at narrative consequences and exploration that you're supposed to be able to do, and dungeon crawls that there are no rules for, and traps and skills that deal with traps and no way to design traps. It is genuinely, when you get under the hood of it as a GM, 5th edition is one of the worst, one of the hardest to actually run. And this is why we can look at a system, in this instance it's Daggerheart, that has very clearly built an incredible set of rules for the narrative pillar, the storytelling pillar. And as much as I have my gripes with yes and as a structure in certain games, there is no denying that it is a term that a lot of people in the hobby are now familiar with. By utilizing that term, by utilizing that structure, they are building narrative rules in a way that is going to be very, very easy for any given person to pick up. That may be the only compliment I ever give Critical Role.
And it's not just Daggerheart. Like, I know of 2 others that I've played that work inside this way.
Please.
Draw Steel, MCDM's new setup, which is, again,
the second of the 3 mats.
The second of the 3 mats. The third. Which is so interesting, because these systems are responses to 5th edition. The social, the negotiation role-playing pillar of that game has baked into it at the end of a social scene. Let's say it is a persuasion scene or a dramatic scene like a trial. They have a alternate system, separate to the combat system, that you can layer on top, that ends up with a yes but, no and prompt based on the performance of the players inside that scenario.
You know what's so funny about this? Given that I'm now affirming my status as the 3rd mat in the online D&D content creation space. As it happens, I'm in the process of designing my own system.
Is this the first time this has been announced?
Well, it's not a super official announcement. This may never see the light of day.
It's an official announcement. The one-shot show role-playing system is on its way.
2029. Like, watch this space. Yeah. But funnily enough, what I've done is the total opposite. I've looked at 5th edition, the system, and look, it's not the first system I played with, but it's the first system I got very familiar with. I now mostly play with Pathfinder 2nd edition, and then my groups sort of dabble in other ones that interest us for whatever reason. And I mentioned before, I play with a bunch of grognards. We like a bit of crunch in our systems. We like a bit of narrative. I talk a lot about the narrative that I introduce and how we handle that. But we like a bit of crunch. And I've gone, well, look, if 5th edition is going to say that there's narrative, exploration, and combat, and only give rules for combat, I'm going to design a system that doesn't even say there's narrative and exploration. I'm going to say there is a system that does combat, and here's how it does combat. And we're going to do a combat system. And I have designed it, and look, other systems do very crunchy combats. Draw Steel is a great example. Draw Steel has a really cool combat system as well. But every single one of those pillars does add some amount of complexity. We often talk about crunch and complexity and rules. Actually having rules for those systems is another layer of crunch. So my way of simplifying a system is by stripping those out whole cloth. I just want the combat, and here is a really robust but ultimately very streamlined set of rules that govern just combat. And it's all built backwards from how the character operates and the things that they can do and the skills that they have, because that's the satisfaction of combat when you're at the table, is what your character gets to do when your turn comes around.
But quickly, let's imagine you are playing 5th edition. at my table now, as a result of playing some of these other games, a little bit of Daggerheart, a little bit of Draw Steel, a little bit of Fabula Ultima, a little bit of Masks, is that I have, it is not perfect. It is a jerry-rigged version of it, but almost exclusively now in 5th edition, when I'm running a D20 roll, I will use a scaling set of DCs that I'll let my players know that incorporate the idea of yes and, yes but, no but, and no and. So if it's 5 or lower, it's a no but. If it's higher, no and, so on. So that the player is also aware that what we're going to do at the table is that. And it's an imperfect solution to a problem that is, like you say, trying to take something that is not baked into 5th edition, which was, a dungeon crawler. And at its heart, still wants to be, maybe.
Yeah. But we also, we do that all the time as GMs anyway. Often we look at things that inspire us, or interesting systems and ways that things can work. A lot of the, if you sit down at the table of a GM who's played a lot of 5th edition and they start introducing all of these house rules and things they do, I know there's horror stories about, they completely changed how rogues work and it sucks now. But often their grab bag of homebrew rules are to support those other pillars, and usually it's because they read a really interesting way of doing it, or they were inspired by another system. They took that and incorporated it into what they already know. Now, there's the argument, just go play another system. But if you want to keep playing the system that you already know and it doesn't have rules for it, steal, borrow, do whatever you want. Pathfinder 2nd edition has a similar, really nice framework built in. They don't use it actively for narrative a whole lot, but you totally could in the same way. They actually actively have degrees of success.
Yeah, awesome.
There's success and failure. There's critical success, critical failure, and it's a 10. So 10 above a success is always a critical success. 10 below a failure is always a critical failure, no matter what. And you could do the exact same thing. You can just make it narrative. If it is a narrative persuasive role, you can have that abject failure and abject success that is a yes and or a no and. But again, we're still jury-rigging that into the system that otherwise did not have that rule with it.
Absolutely. So whatever game you're playing, wherever you may be, consider that we don't have to be sitting at an extreme of either of our yes and no buts. There are ways through it, and there are systems that are doing their darndest to make it so. Curious to hear, are there games that you are playing that are doing this thing? I'm super interested to see how because so much 5th edition is played, there must be other ways that people are trying to make it work.
Yes, and that's all the time we have. We'll see you in the next one. That's been the One Shot Show.
Thank you so much.
If you like what you just heard, feel free to support us on Patreon. Every little bit helps. Go to patreon.com/oneshotshow.